Today's episode is brought to you in full by Heartlift International, a 501c3 dedicated to making home and family the safest, most secure place on earth. Learn how you can donate and support the podcast at heartliftcentral.com. Now, settle in for today's remarkable conversation with Janelle. Wherever you find yourself today, may these words help you become stronger in every way.
Elissa Strauss has been writing about the politics and culture of parenting and caregiving for more than 15 years. Her work appears in publications like The Atlantic, The New York Times, Glamour, and elsewhere, and she was a former contributing writer at CNN.com and Slate, where her cultural criticism about motherhood appeared weekly on XX. She lives in Oakland, California, with her family. Today we talk to Elissa about when you care, the unexpected magic of caring for others. Hello and welcome to today's Heart Lift with Janelle, and today we bring a very important conversation to the table with a very lovely woman named Elissa Strauss. Thank you, Elissa, and thank you for writing your book, When You Care, the unexpected magic of caring for others. This is such a good read. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have this chat.
I mean, it's such an important topic. It is so near and dear to my heart as I spent 9 years caregiving for my mama and having to navigate all of the things, assisted living, aging in place, 50,000 surgeries and medical treatments. And it was just the death of me on many accounts. Like, I can't keep going. But yeah, you are framing it the way that I ended up framing it. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. And of course, to bring the topic of mothering, which is the most important topic in my heart, other than now grandmothering. So
yeah.
Why this book? Like, you are a incredible journalist. You've got accolades and all of the things. And I've already told my heart lifters all about your journey as a professional journalist. Why this book, and why this book first? This is your first book.
Yeah, it's my first big book. I've done other smaller book projects, anthologies and whatnot, but yes. Yeah, I feel like for me, it was a product of writing about the lack of structural support for caregivers, parents and caregivers for so long, and reaching a point where I felt like I couldn't write one more article of why we don't have paid leave, basically, that there was something deeper going on here, that this was a problem that's not just a policy issue. It's not just a structural matter of how are we going to pay for paid leave. There's actually something deeper in the roots of our culture.
Yes.
That has created this total blind spot to care, which is something, if there's ever something in hiding in plain sight, it's care. But we have this complete blind spot to it. And what's going on there? Like, how did care get left out of so many of the ways we make meaning or define the good life or talk about what matters and doesn't matter? So it was kind of like I had this realization that there's a whole cultural piece to this. And at the end of the day, I'm more of a humanities person than a social science person. So I leaned into that piece and really tried to unravel how care was left out of how we make meaning and how we value our lives, and what do it take to put it back in. I want caregivers to feel good about giving care, to be proud of it, and to see how big it is.
I love it. I like personify words when I'm writing. And so I feel like you personified care. And I just feel like I get to know her very well when I'm reading your book. I mean, I make her because care seems maternal, I guess. So
yeah.
It's not just maternal. I've been really studying and writing a book proposal on matriarchs. And I guess because I'm entering that phase of life now in my 60s, mid 60s, yikes. I don't know how I got here. But being the matriarch of my family, is very important to me. And I think it is important to you. And you said it took becoming a mom in all reality. Like, you were a professional journalist. You've written for the big guns, and your husband is also a professional writer. So you become a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And where does your journalist mind go? I love your journalist mind, by the way. I just love it.
Oh, thank you. So I think for me, it really started as kind of a personal epiphany that I had a sense that I was never ambivalent about wanting children. That was not I always had like in my gut sense that my parents, they had 4 kids, and raising those 4 kids was really just one of the greatest pleasures, if not the greatest pleasure of their lives. So I had a sense that like I wanted my own children. I always enjoyed kids. I wasn't conflicted about that.
Right.
But I was very concerned of how motherhood could take over one's identity. And particularly in these kind of literary intellectual circles in Brooklyn, where I lived at the time, that was a very strong narrative. And, the reality is we have not yet figured out, and my book is my effort to try to help us figure out, we haven't really figured out how to untangle care from the patriarchy, right? To care is its own good thing, but yes, and also women haven't always had consent around care, right? Or care has held them back in many ways. So I was kind of in the mess of that. And my plan, foolish in hindsight, was that I would, be a mom. I'd love my kid, but I'd kind of keep it separate from everything else. I wouldn't let it take over my identity. I wouldn't go to mommy groups or mommy me yoga or drink mom juice,
mommy juice.
Yeah.
We had nothing like that. And I think it's hysterical. I would have been an alcoholic. I think I had twins and 3 kids under 4. I don't know. I come from a family of alcoholics. So I think, I was a teetotaler back then. I'm afraid what might have happened with my mommy juice.
Yeah. Listen, I drink wine. I just didn't call it mommy juice. Yeah.
I'm laughing, but it's not really funny. There is probably an issue
there. No, there's actually a big issue there, which there always has been. It was drugs back in the 50s and 60s. It's like you can't lock a woman in her home with a child all day and expect her not to lose her mind. I mean, obviously, I love care. I love my kids, but we're not supposed to do it alone all day.
No.
So, so I think for me, the big surprising moment was that before I had kids, I did all these things. I call them epiphany-seeking experiences. They will be familiar to everyone. I traveled the world. I did meditation retreats. I tried psychedelics. I hiked tall mountains. All these things that in our culture are traditionally rewarded as things that bring you wisdom. Wisdom, like obsessive wisdom seeker.
Eat, pray, love. Yes.
Yeah, eat, pray, love. Exactly. Wild.
All these
narratives that we have of like, this is how you find yourself. This is how you find wisdom.
So good.
I'm glad they're out there. It's not about one thing versus the other. But at the end of the day, I realized that I was learning so much more about myself and the nature of life itself by caring for my kids. It started, when my little one, he was little then, now he's 11, when when he started talking, and I realized like, there's a whole human being in front of me.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Now it's a grandchild. I'm like, she's talking.
Yeah. Totally. It's like they are these like singular consciousnesses that somehow enter your orbit. And you have to relate to them and protect them, but give them space. And the whole dance of it blew my mind philosophically, intellectually, spiritually, psychologically, creatively. And that was really a turning point for me. I was like, oh, wait, we have really, really devalued this care thing.
Do you remember a moment when you really did have that epiphany? Like, is it when your child started talking? When was it? What moment? I don't know if there was one moment, but I'm thinking back to my life. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there were moments, but like one of them that sticks out was I would take take Augie then, and we live in California now, but we lived in New York then, New York City then, where I would take him to a little Friday afternoon music singing group, right? Where someone would play guitar and the children would sing along. and it was cute. It was a Jewish one. We did some Shabbat Friday night blessings
fun.
after they got challah and grape juice, and we'd leave. A tot Shabbat, they call it.
So I take him. Shabbat. This is amazing.
Yeah. So I would take him, and he'd sit there quiet the whole time. Not a word, never sing. All the other kids are singing, and he's just sitting there. And then I'd put him in the stroller, and I'd wheel him home back to our apartment. And then he would start singing and sing every single song.
Wow.
And we all know, toddlers are quirky. I mean, they like by their very nature.
He's probably a little journalist, though. He's just observing it all.
I think he's
right?
Absolutely. It's very insightful. But it was like, I was like, why aren't you singing? Why am I taking, it was the first moment where I was like, oh, I have these expectations. And hang on, he's a human, like a whole human, with a sense of like internal motivations and ways of being in the world. And it's so small, but it's also the biggest thing ever to realize that other people aren't the same as us, right? Like if we all could really do that, the world would be a better place.
Right.
And we know it, right? We all know.
We have head knowledge. It's head knowledge, but the distance to the heart is very long. That's why I say that's the longest journey ever. Right.
Exactly. And so when it gets to the heart, in Yiddish, we say kishkas a lot. And it's like guts, but I think it's the same. Kishkas. Yeah, exactly. Kishkas knowledge.
Oh my God, I love that. Kishkas.
Yeah, it's like in your body. It's in your heart. Gut. You feel it. Yeah. And so, right. And that's the difference, right? That's what care did for me. It took these kind of abstract concepts that, of course, if someone asked me, is someone else different than you? I'd be like, yeah. But I don't think most of us feel that in our hearts or our guts or, I actually don't. I think that's a big, and so that was that one moment I was like, oh, wait a minute, but before he talked, it was, I could tend to him without really reckoning with that. But once he was verbal and engaging in the world as his own being, I stepped back and it was eye-opening.
It's the best. I'm just like, I'm going to just keep referencing, I'm such a brand new grandma, but it's just like, I've got chills everywhere because it's like she's starting the first one. I have had 4 in 2.5 years with one coming at the end of September. So 5. And it's like, it's just the first one, is 2.5. And she's bilingual. So she's a little delayed, but she's now talking more and it's just the best and animated, expressing and just, I'm like, girl, this is fun.
It is. It's its own birth, right? Maybe obviously I'm a verbally inclined person. I'm a writer, but it's its own birth, and it's like, there's something revealed then that is real, is really real.
But I feel like in your work, because it really is written from a journalistic point of view, in the sense of you watching mommy groups and, sitting alone with your own and watching you write about that. And I love your keen sense of observation. And I think it serves the book, but it's going to serve the world in such a beautiful way if people will listen, because I feel like personally, what's missing is the maternal spirit. And the maternal spirit is definitely what is more associated with caregiving. So I love that you are giving it the credence and actually the vital it's vital. I've listened more keenly the past couple of years because I'm working on my own work on the matriarchy and how important it is. But, when they come and talk about a school shooter, and I just distinctly remember one of the last ones, they just said he's very estranged from his mother. And then the other one, estranged from his mother. I just kept hearing estranged from the mother. And I thought, wow, the mother is really, really missing. And you write a beautiful question, why care? And I love that. But one of the old, I guess, mindsets, it's a mindset, isn't it? Caregiving, is caregiving gets in a mother's way.
Yeah.
and you write about Doris Lessing, and I just thought this quote is just very hard to read. It was hard for me to even write. I wrote it down. There is nothing more boring for an intelligent woman than to spend endless amounts of time with small children. Oh, it's hard to swallow. Yeah. Why did that speak to you? Like, why did you write about it in the beginning?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the sea I was swimming in when I had kids, that it was somehow antithetical to intelligence to engage with small children. Now, of course, she says endless. And listen, I too expired when I had small children. I had help. I worked. It wasn't though I am promoting one way to mother.
We're not. It's not what we're saying here. Mm-mm.
Right. But, and I actually think it's like a hard point to express, but it's so important. When we put it as a zero-sum game, when we juxtapose it, it's like intelligent women don't like kids, and then therefore the implication is unintelligent women do like kids. We're just minimizing what care is. Or if we're like, you either like kids and want to spend all day with them, or you don't like kids and don't want to spend all day with them, you're also missing how actually care is like rich in hard work. It's not, it can be a burden, and it's often a burden, but it's also so much else. And to actually be in that dance of care takes a lot out of a person. And it doesn't mean that you hate it, or it doesn't mean that it's stupid and bad and smart women shouldn't do it. It just means care is a really big, rich thing. It doesn't make you a saint. It just makes you more human.
Well, that's the key. And you bring that point out over and over again. And I just want everyone to just, especially I come from the Judeo-Christian world, right? This is where I was taught no self-care, right? You just give. And so now, I understand how critically important it is to care for myself and put my oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
But I feel like what you're saying in this is, it is all about service, serving one human, serving another human, and serving in a hard place, but serving with attention and inner awareness. So it's like, that's what I shared with you before we started recording, that I had spent 9 years, almost a decade being the primary caregiver, POA, in charge of my mother's aging. And so that involved really difficult life movement. And I just kept saying, this is getting in my way. I would have that internal dialogue and that internal war. I mean, that was a decade of my productivity.
Yeah.
As an author, all the things that I do. And you can't help. I can just, walking down the hall of her assisted living to her room 59, that was just, for me, like a crucible that I learned more about myself than I would have ever learned in a million years. I mean, I can just see myself, and I'm chilling up because it was hard. Or pacing hospitals and sitting in chapels. But that was the time. There's that word in the Greek, eudaimonia, right? Where you find true meaning in life.
Yeah.
And meaningfulness.
Yeah.
And that is what truly makes a great life. Not just hedonia, happiness, right?
Right.
Is that what you're trying to say to us? Is that?
Yeah. I think, right, care is really just one of the main vehicles that we make meaning. There's no question about it.
I think so.
I think we have a very real problem, though, today, that caregivers aren't adequately supported, whether by communities or by social services and government policies, that the burden piece can become so big, it can disrupt the capacity to make that meaning.
Oh,
and
talk to us. Yes.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm like. I want us to fight, not just to relieve caregiver burden, but so we can all have the right to get meaning from our care experiences. I am lucky. My parenting experience involved having 2 kids that, like, knock wood so far, pretty easy kids, and I'll take some credit. I think I'm a good mom. I try hard, but also it's luck. It's luck too, kids. And so they were pretty good sleepers, pretty good eaters, nice. They're like, they function, well enough at school, so, but I also was lucky that we were able to afford a nanny. It doesn't mean it was pretty. It doesn't mean our finances are, in great shape, because the hit of childcare and summer camps and everything is just enormous. But we could do it. Listen, I have a house. I could do it.
Yes.
A lot of people don't have it. It is a privilege.
A luxury.
So I was able to find this meaning in care because I'm lucky enough to have many layers of privilege and good fortune, basically. And,
That's very honest. Very honest of you to say that.
Allowed me to access the meaning. And I'm not alone. I think a lot of people and they're able to have better versus worse experiences caring for a parent with dementia, because they can afford to put the parent in a safe and kind of healthy, in all terms, right? Environment for the parent, whether they have a in-house home healthcare aide or they're able to put their parent in a home and they could visit often, so then the meaning's possible. Someone I write about in my book, Robert, who cared for his wife Marie with Parkinson's. He had a really meaningful experience of care, but it came really largely because he had the privilege, right?
Yes, but
so I think that's the important thing. Like we can often access deep meaning, like you mean, through care. We really can. And I think it's just been left out of the human story in a way that makes me angry and sad every day.
Yeah.
When I ask a caregiver to a parent or to an elder parent or a fellow parent to young children, tell me about your care experience. I'm like, you don't want to hear that. That's boring. Like, no, I want to hear it. I want to hear it more than I want to hear your story of climbing Mount Everest, frankly. Like that I know,
God,
but
it's so good.
The crucible of raising that one and only human or humans, or tending to a parent when their cognitive function's declining, but they're still a human, and how do you, what is that
so hard.
teaching you about the essence of life? Like, I want to hear all of it. And I think that's the tricky part of, we need to speak about the good parts of care, not because care is actually easy and we don't need support, but because it's so valuable and it's so meaningful, and we're being denied that experience, like, systemically right now by a society that's totally blind to caregiver needs.
Yeah, I mean, I am shaking my head so hard I'm going to get it because this is not a message that is being told. And I'm so glad that you have the innate capacity, is one of my favorite words, that, to have deconstructed this subject and put it in such tangible, beautiful words. I mean, just beautiful. I'm going to just read this right now. The shame and fear about letting motherhood get the best of me in my own life metabolized into rage in my essays and blog posts. So this is when you were first becoming a mom and you were looking at everything. I became one of those journalists whose work filled me with guilt, writing often and furiously about the perils of caregiving and the way women suffered as a result of doing it. This was early in your work. I pushed for changes to individuals, men in particular, governments, workplaces. You've said that. I raged about the way mothers were discriminated against when seeking out paid work, and how the demands of motherhood made it hard for women from all income brackets to achieve financial independence. You go on and you go on, but then you say this. What I didn't say, certainly not in my writing, and not even to myself at first, which was what I thought was critically important, was that parenthood was far more compelling than I thought it would be. This, to me, Elissa, is the crux. Like, I want you on every morning show, everything, where you can just shout this from the top of Mount Kilimanjaro or Mount Everest when you get up there. Parenthood was far more compelling than I had thought it would be. Oh, yes, that The older Augie got, the truer this felt. And then even more so when my second son, Levi, was born 4.5 years later. I always anticipated feeling some amount of joy as a parent. And after making it through the dark and narrow tunnel of our first 4 months of parenthood, I found lots of it. Children in flesh and spirit can be a wonder. But what I discovered was something more and more complicated than just joy. I want you to tell everyone listening what you found that was even more important than joy. That's a huge statement.
Yeah.
That's so good.
So I think for me, more than joy, I found this deep self-knowledge and an ability to see myself more clearly than I ever have. I've always considered myself an introspective person. You know, I was an avid diary keeper. I read poetry, you know, by bodies of water, and would take long walks,
Nature.
you know, contemplating. Yeah, exactly.
Contemplating.
Right. And I think when I had kids, in trying to respond to the needs of another, did I learn some stuff about myself, stuff that therapy didn't reveal, stuff that all this diary writing didn't reveal, as I write about in the book.
Yeah.
And, you know, this one might take a minute because it's a little counterintuitive, but I actually realized that I had a compulsive caregiving instinct by doing the very real caregiving of being my children's mother.
That unfolded, right?
So I was, you know, child of divorce. I was always kind of the wise child. I'm one of four, you know. And when my parents got divorced in my late teens, they really turned to me as like their confidant and best friend, which is a very common thing.
Yeah.
And I also felt the sense that kind of keeping the family together and organized was my responsibility. Mm-hmm. I have to say, it's not like these things, they're layered, they're complicated, right?
Very subconscious, very layered, no one's mean, your parents didn't mean to put bad responsibility on you. No, just, it's all part of the package.
Yeah. And, you know, in part, what came along with it, I do have a real strong sense. You know, I was like the mom in college. I would organize holidays. I would cook for everyone. That's a big part of my identity. I don't want to go and say now, oh, that was all terrible and I was oppressed and damaged. And there's some of that I'm really proud of. I have always had a strong care instinct for others. And I also am like a relatively high functioning organizer type. It's not, you know, I can plan a dinner in 3 minutes in my head, or some of my friends are like, Elissa, that would have taken me 2 hours. So, you know, I got it. I'm happy to share it. Yeah. So I don't want to say, oh, that was it and I was damaged by that. But it wasn't all healthy either. Mm-hmm. And it did leave me with this sense that kind of, I have to help fix everyone all the time. Like everyone is mine. If a friend comes to me with a problem, do X, Y, and Z. And it may be great advice. I mean it with a full heart. But there's something about having kids that made me realize, like, A, it's not my responsibility to fix everyone. And B, like, maybe not everybody actually wants me to fix them all the time. Maybe, they just may want someone to listen. And it sounds funny that I learned this through intensive caregiving, but I think that's the thing about when you really are caring for someone. So it's different than caring for a friend or my sister. You know, when I'm really caring for someone who's really dependent on me to survive and thrive and grow as a human, like my children are, I had to come face to face with the fact that, like, I can't fix it all for them. I cannot fix it all. Please learn that now.
Please learn that now, please. Yes.
Yeah.
As adult children, it's tough. I know.
And then I was like, maybe I can't fix everything for everyone. Like, maybe that's actually not what I'm supposed to be doing this life. I can care for people without trying to fix everything all the time. I can separate those two because, you know, my sons have been through heartbreaks and struggles that, like, life shit happens. Life happens. It does.
It really,
and
really does.
And I deluded myself that I could be the one to stop the shit. You know?
I know, exactly.
And then I was like, oh, I can't. And that's really liberating. And that brought me a lot of self-awareness. And so that's the kind of stuff I think when we really think of our care experiences as these deep life journeys, as these heroes' journeys.
Ooh.
And I write about so many different people's stories in the book.
You do.
So much
It's really
self-revelation and life revelation by way of care. When we change the frame on care, when we widen the aperture and see care as this big, meaty, transcendent, sometimes annoying, sometimes wild, sometimes joyful, sometimes disappointing ride.
Yes.
Exactly. When we really let it be as big as it actually is in our lives, those kind of revelations can emerge.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we want to wake up at 6 a.m. when our kids vomiting. Doesn't mean we love it all. We're not saints. This isn't the fairy tale version of care, but it's not the nightmare version either. It's the real life version.
No, it's not binary by any means. And I think what you say is to build a culture or a culture of feminism, I'll get it out, building a feminism of care.
Yeah.
I love that. I think I know what you mean, but I would love for you to tell us what you mean.
Yeah, so as I write about in my book, and this was how I experienced feminism personally, I didn't do large scale, quantitative or qualitative research on this, but my experience of feminism was basically devoid of care. Whether it was career feminism, go be in the corner suite. Great. Love it. My sister's like an awesome career lady. She's got this beautiful big office. So glad she's there. We need women, it's not that's not bad. But that doesn't acknowledge care really. Right. The other kind of feminisms, reproductive right feminisms. The reproductive justice in the way I experience it did not also include the right to have a healthy birth, or the right to not pay $7,000 for your birth, or the right to have support with breastfeeding. So that's again, like, not rejecting what I experienced, but realizing like, wait, why isn't care part of that story? Or kind of what they call sex positive feminism, Sex in the City feminism. Great. Like, glad that women have choices, glad that women, can, like I did, for not that long, honestly. I met my husband kind of young, but live in cities and date and have fun and explore themselves outside of marriage. Support it.
Up to you.
Also, like, that show was pretty hostile to motherhood.
It really was.
When someone had a baby, it was like they were othered. Like they were just off. Like,
it is funny that Carrie never has a baby yet. Right? In the Sex and the City. That's very fascinating. You're bringing that to the table. I'm just now thinking that she never had a baby.
Right. And not that all women have babies, and not that right. No, exactly.
We're just talking.
No, totally. And I don't think you think that. I'm saying, like, it's about, but still, like, it didn't celebrate care or think about care as a path. None of these celebrated care. It was care, if anything, was something you had to run from, because it was the consensual care that non-consensual care that did oppress women historically was something we had to run from and do all these other things instead.
It would get in your way. And get in the way of what? That's the end. That was the ended question. That's the question after walking down that hallway for 9 years. I was like, what is this getting in the way of?
Yeah, I love that.
What is this really getting in the way of?
Right.
But that's ego. That's ego dying. That's dying in our Christian worldview. It would be dying to self. It would be picking up your cross. It would be all of those, when I'm stripped of all of these ego dominated, I've got to be this, I've got to be this, I've got to be this. Isn't it just Mother Teresa? I mean, it's just caring for that person and giving someone dignity. And in the end, it increased my dignity because I was able to go, I loved well. That was my motivating force. Was I didn't want to stand before my God and not have cared well. It was important to me to learn how to care well. And it was multifaceted. And I know that's what you're saying. It is a selfless, but that doesn't mean you don't care for yourself. That's not what selfless means.
Right.
It's just putting another human before yourself and loving yourself as well. So it's mutual. There's a mutuality in that.
Exactly.
And
right.
That's what you're saying. And that's what you're calling us to, right? It's really a mindset. I just have to think it's just like this.
It is.
Paradigm shift of really finding who you really are in those moments. You can't find yourself in any other way. I don't think. Like part of the whole principle of eudaimonia is that it's hard.
Yes, right.
You have to persevere. It has to be something that, takes you to the end of yourself so you can come to the beginning of your truest self. So good.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
No, I love it. And we have to ask ourselves why, when you're doing something like caring for, let's say, a dying parent, what society have we built?
Yes.
That being with them in that transition is something that we see as getting in the way of real work, real productivity, real self-discovery.
Yeah, I sure did.
If we all agree dignity matters, right? Big picture. Oh yeah, humans deserve dignity. That's a fundamental kind of claim of the human rights movement. But guess how dignity actually happens? The great cathedrals of dignity are built brick by brick with care, one person caring for the other. Yeah. And so those acts that may seem small of care are actually the scaffolding for our humanity.
Oh, that's so beautifully and well said. You should be a writer. The scaffolding, that's really critical. That's a beautiful image if we think about it. And I've been in many cathedrals around the world, and they're quite beautiful. And they were built brick by laborers. Yeah. I would love to read a part of this and get your thoughts. What I am asking for here, this is you writing, isn't for us to deny women the power of going away or to deny the difficulties, you've already said this, of care, but for us to see both going away and staying home as sometimes challenging, potentially life-changing experiences. What I want is for someone to also describe a picture of a woman doing care as an image about power, about freedom, about trusting oneself, or even better, a man. Women get to do the things they never used to get to do, like travel, have careers they're passionate about, and revel in the pleasures and insights those offer. And they now, alongside everyone else, get to explore the potential in long belittled, long reduced, long ignored care. I just think that's just so. I really believe, Elissa, if women can embody that's really the word, isn't it? Embody it, that this is the most important thing I can do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've lived long enough. I have children old enough. I'm having grandchildren, and I'm just, nothing else that I've done really is of any vital importance in a sense. Sure, it's important. I've exercised my gifts and I've, done what I feel like I am supposed to do. But I don't know. There's just nothing like a FaceTime call from Belgium in the morning and a little 2-year-old going, book, book, book. Because now all of a sudden I'm back to the point where this could be getting in my way.
Yeah.
I don't really want to leave that point. Because I think we're so undermining what's really important in today's social media culture. And what's really important is reading a book I'm just talking to myself now.
Yeah.
And not thinking she's getting in the way. I have a Substack to write. I have a book to work on. I have a fill in the blank, anyone who's listening.
Right.
What's more important than enriching someone else's life, no matter how old they are? Is that what you're saying?
I think, I want to hold that. That's all important, but I want that enriching someone's life to be given the due that it deserves, and it just hasn't been. And I think we look at people, the research of people on their deathbeds, what are they generally thinking back about? What at that point is saying, okay, I lived a worthy life? It's really their relationships, right? Mm-hmm. It's, did I invest in connection with other humans? Mm-hmm. We want to live forever. You know, a lot of tech billionaires these days are putting so much money into trying to outlive, mortality. Mm-hmm. That's care is actually a pathway to immortality, right? It is. It's how we live genetically or just through values and energy.
At the blue zones. It's community. The blue zones are all communities, Sardinia, all those places where people are taking care of each other. The women are baking their bread together every day fresh because that's how they do it. And they're kneading their bread. Just watch it on Netflix. It'll move you like no one's business, you know. And I think, but I also hear you saying, which is really the difficult tension, right? It is not either or. And in my generation, it was.
Definitely.
It really, really, really was. It was not for all. I mean, there are the Jane Goodalls, you know, there are those. But especially in my experience as a Christian, evangelical world Christian, it was you stay home, you do not work. You were minimized if you worked. And so I love that my daughters are beyond that and that they know the value of both and they can do both and there's no judgment there. And you can be a brilliant doctor and still be a brilliant mother.
Definitely. And even better, not only can you do both,
tell me,
they feed each other.
They do. Yes.
Like your care for your children. If you're an attentive, attuned mother and you're a doctor, that what you learn how to attune yourself properly to another by way of parenthood probably is going to end up in how you practice medicine.
It is.
How I write is absolutely been influenced by how I care. That realization that Agnia's surprise a different person changed the way I write entirely. It made me much more sensitive to the risk of being too certain about ideas. And actually, ideas are so much more exciting when you're not totally certain about them.
They're fluid.
I of moved, and leave openings in the self and how one perceives the world. What a better way to live. And I got there through parenthood. So that's the last beautiful step, right? It's like, not only can we do both, we can actually see how both can work to lift both sides up.
Yes.
Also presents challenges. It is tough being a working parent. It's tough being a working mom, 100%. But
that's what I see as your feminism of care, in the sense that building communities that support each other to fully be expressing our gifts and talents. I mean, I'm all about that. And yet being able to be interrupted with what's most meaningful at the moment. So you're not, this is not a binary. It is both.
Not a binary.
It's both and.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, men also benefit from care. So that's the other piece, right? Like,
yes,
we raise up
today.
Care.
Yes.
Exactly. But we raise up care, and let's get men, men do more care. We share more equitably. I mean, this is a beautiful vision of the future. What that means in each individual house is not up to me to say. I would never tell anyone how to live. Yeah. But big picture, the more we get everybody doing this amazing thing called care, it allows more room for our other selves to develop that also matter to us, and it's my husband does a lot of care. Yeah, exactly. And my husband doesn't do care to help me, importantly. I mean, sometimes maybe, but that's not the lens. The lens is that he does care because being with his children is really meaningful to him too.
Yeah, he's not babysitting. Oh boy,
he's not babysitting. He's not giving mom a break,
right.
Which sometimes that's how it is, and that's fine. But it's not. It's like, oh, I'm their dad. I actually like being their dad. I find being with them meaningful and exciting and fun. So, right? There's also the fun piece.
So this is a message to all of us, men, women, all of us, to embrace the nurture a nurturing spirit towards humanity.
Yes.
Fair.
Amen. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, so in closing, which don't want to, but I just want everyone to read this book because it's just what I think is the solution to so many of the problems that we have. Because I pound the table over home needs to be the safest, most secure place on earth. And that will not happen if we do not embrace caregiving. If we do not embrace care, capital C, as our best friend inside of our homes, we will not have a future worth looking forward to in any realm. And so what are a few of the things that perhaps we can initiate today for those of us listening that can help us create a culture of care in our lives?
So I think there's the political piece, right? Of we are the only industrialized country in the world without paid leave. Yep. And that really does get in the way. There's tons of data. It gets in the way of new moms being able to properly bond with their children.
For sure.
So there's and the other layers of governmental change that can happen, right? Like actually, I know people who would love to care better for their parent, but they have to work, what can they do? They would not be a roof over their parents' head.
That's correct.
Who lives with them. But, so there's lots of ideas. Again, I don't say I'm the policy queen.
You are not running for governor. Correct.
Yep. But we need better solutions and we need them fast. And I'll leave it to others to decide exactly what those solutions look like and how to best implement them. And then I think we need the soul change, which is really what my book is about. And we need to ask ourselves different questions about our care experiences. We need to see our care experiences as a hero's journey, as worthy and mighty as going to war or hiking that Mount Everest or any other things we do. And I think when we start with that perspective change, it really can lead to a whole different way of being in the world. And I want us to give that to ourselves and to others. Ask your friend how care is going. And if they just tell you, oh, it's been hard because I try to get this, this service to come and I couldn't, push a little harder. Like keep going because you'll see. Like I've spoken to so many parents and caregivers. You push a little bit when we get past of what preschool the kid's going to, or, if you had to do a different home healthcare agency, to get your aids, all that kind of practical stuff, push deeper and say, like, what's it been like for you? Like, what does it feel like for you? What are you thinking about these days through care? Suddenly you see their eyes widen and you see it happening in real time that, oh, wait, are you taking this experience? They're kind of like first the shock, like, oh, someone else is actually really curious about this and taking this whole care thing seriously. And then they start thinking and they start speaking and actually 100% they're in that hero's journey, but they may not have realized it.
And they need to be validated. Like I needed a hand on my back that said, I just remember my younger daughter walking down that hallway. Yeah. Walking down that hallway with me. My mom and her walker, and I thought if she don't walk faster, I'm going to come out of my skin. And then I would talk to myself and go, come on back, Janelle, you're okay. But then my daughter put her hand on my back and she said, Mom, you're taking such good care of Grandma.
Yeah, and imagine if you're a pastor, a priest, or an imam and a rabbi talked about it from the pulpit on a regular basis. And,
That's correct.
This is holy work. How would that change our perspective when you're doing that labor, which is tedious and is repetitive, and you don't always want to be doing it, whether it's shushing the baby or walking the parent down the hallway. But if you can see it as holy, and whatever the word holy means to you, you see it as holy, maybe it changes the whole experience of it, right?
It does. It does. And you can just go to sleep at night, because this was my experience, and put my head on the pillow, exhausted, but go, I'm proud of you, girl. You're taking good care of you. Or you made it through another day and you sat with your 8-month-old under the table for 3 hours just while she explored life. That's holy work.
It is.
Thank you from the deepest part of my heart.
Oh.
Thanks for listening today. Please meet Janelle over at Heartlift Central on Substack at Heartlift Central, where we can keep this remarkable conversation going. Please share today's episode with a friend and invite them to become stronger every day. Heartlifter, always remember this: you have value, worth, and dignity.